Let's call her Brianna. She's 30, a financial analyst at Meridian Partners in Brookfield, with a knack for spotting patterns others miss. For 7 years, she'd built a life with her husband, Blake, a renovated craftsman home, weekend hiking trips, plans for a family. But lately, their marriage had been strained. Blake's late nights, defensive responses, sudden interest in offshore investments. Brianna chalked it up to work stress until one Tuesday at 11. When she noticed something in the client portfolios Blake's team managed. Transaction fees were higher than disclosed, the difference flowing to an untraceable administrative account. The pattern appeared in dozens of high-value portfolios, all signed off by Blake and his partners, Grant and Mason. This wasn't a clerical error. It was systematic, unethical, and illegal. She copied the files to a secure folder, her stomach tightening. These weren't just colleagues. They were her dinner companions, vacation partners, the people whose kids would have grown up with hers. For 3 days, Brianna gathered evidence, staying late at the office, tracing the money to shell companies in the Caymans. Her hands shook as she compiled the documents. The establishment dates aligning with fishing trips Blake had taken with Grant, Mason, and their friends Gabrielle, Ellie, Vanessa, Jordan. On Friday, she made Blake's favorite dinner. Herb-crusted salmon, roasted asparagus, a bottle of Cabernet from their Napa anniversary trip. She set the table, placing her tablet with the evidence beside her plate. Something special tonight, Blake asked, loosening his tie. I thought we could talk, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Halfway through dinner, she showed him the spreadsheet. These accounts, managed by your team, show a pattern of overcharging clients. The extra fees are being diverted off the books. Silence stretched like a chasm. Blake's face cycled through surprise. Calculation. Then practiced concern. We're piloting a premium service package, he said smoothly. The paperwork must not have been updated. It's all above board, just messy. For 2 years, she pressed. And why route the fees through 3 holding companies? A flash of anger crossed his face before he smiled, reaching for her hand. Accounting vagaries. I'll show you the documentation tomorrow. His explanation created just enough doubt. We need time away, he said. Pivoting. Remember how we talked about Morocco? Let's go for our anniversary next month. 2 weeks in Marrakesh, the Blue City. We can invite the others. Grant, Gabrielle, Mason, Ellie. A group trip. The inclusion of the very people implicated should have been a red flag. But Brianna saw it as transparency. Let me think about it, she said. That night, as Blake slept, she lay awake, wondering if she'd been offered a gift or a trap. The documentation never materialized. Just excuses about delays. Against her better judgment, Brianna agreed to the trip, hoping she was wrong. Landing in Menara Airport. The Moroccan heat hit like a wall. Blake's friend Jordan organized the group with unusual efficiency, splitting couples between taxis. Gabrielle slid next to Brianna, her smile not reaching her eyes. Isn't this exciting? She said. I've been dying to see Marrakesh. Their riad in the Medina was a hidden gem. Blue tile work, citrus trees, a bubbling fountain. But Brianna caught furtive glances between Blake and Mason, a silent language she wasn't meant to understand. The first day set a pattern, group excursions through the souks, where she was never left alone. Vanessa linking arms, Blake insisting on couple shots, holding her too tightly. On the second evening, at a restaurant in Guélis, Brianna excused herself, taking a wrong turn to test a theory. Within 3 minutes, Ellie accidentally found her. I thought you'd been kidnapped by carpet merchants, she laughed. Her relief false. They were watching her. That night, she checked Blake's phone. A new password. Her unease deepened into dread. On day 4, during a tour of Baia Palace, Brianna lagged behind. Overhearing Grant and Mason, still needs the final transfer. Grant murmured. Blake said it's handled. Mason replied, tomorrow night's the window. She suspects something. Doesn't matter now, Grant said, stopping as he noticed her. These ceilings are incredible, she said innocently, her heart hammering. That afternoon, while Blake showered, his laptop chimed with an email from Karim. Transfer. Complete to designated accounts. She will be delivered tomorrow. as arranged. Accommodations prepared. Another email from Grant contained a spreadsheet. Brianna forwarded both to her personal email, clearing the sent folder just as the shower stopped. That evening, at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Medina, the group's focus on her intensified. Champagne flowed. Toasts multiplied. Every conversation directed back to her. Another glass, Gabrielle offered, pouring before she could answer. Jordan proposed a drinking game. Brianna drank regardless of her answers. She discreetly emptied glasses into potted plants, pretending to grow intoxicated. "I need air," she slurred. Stumbling, Blake studied her, nodding to Mason. "Maybe we should get you back," he said, concern painting his features. In their room, he removed her jewelry, helped her into nightclothes. "Just sleep," he murmured, kissing her forehead. "Everything will be better tomorrow." She maintained the charade, listening as he made hushed calls. At 30. He slipped out with a small bag. Exhaustion claimed her before dawn. When she woke, sunlight streamed through unfamiliar curtains. The air smelled of stale cigarettes, the sheets rough, the ceiling stained. This wasn't their Riyadh. It was a dingy motel room in Sidi Ghanem, a rundown Marrakesh neighborhood. On the nightstand sat her dead phone, her emptied wallet, and a note in Blake's handwriting. "Survive this. Genius. Maybe next time you'll mind your own business." Reality crashed over her. They drugged her despite her precautions, transported her here, and vanished. Her passport and cards were gone from the safe. Notifications flooded her phone when it powered up. Blake had drained their joint accounts, maxed out her credit cards, liquidated her personal investments, using an emergency authorization she'd given him years ago. Access to her accounts was blocked. The bank said her cards were reported stolen. Security information changed. "We can send new cards to your home address in 7 to 10 days. The representative said. "I'm in Morocco," Brianna replied, her voice hollow. "You'll need to visit the American consulate," they advised. 3 hours later, she emerged from the consulate with temporary ID and a bitter truth. Repatriation would take days, and they couldn't help with funds. She had $43 hidden in her travel journal, an old backpacking habit Blake had mocked. Paranoid much? He'd laughed. Not paranoid enough. With $43 to last, Brianna wandered the streets, the aroma of fresh bread drawing her to a small cafe. Inside, a man argued with a young woman over a ledger. Numbers misaligned. Expenses miscategorized. "Your column additions are incorrect," Brianna said, pointing. "You're categorizing food and supply expenses together." The owner, Hamed, raised his eyebrows. "You know numbers. I'm a financial analyst," she explained. He pushed the ledger toward her. "Can you fix?" For an hour, she reorganized their books, the work calming her. Hamed studied the neat columns. "You are sent by Allah," he declared. When she prepared to leave, he blocked the door. "Where you go? I need affordable lodging," she admitted. After a rapid conversation with his daughter Aisha, he offered. "We have storage room upstairs. Small but clean. You stay. Help with books. I give food and room until you go home. Fair trade." "Why would you help me?" she asked. 20 years ago, I visit Chicago. Wallet stolen. American family helped me. Now I help you. This is humanity." That night, she slept on a cot among coffee beans and spices, more grateful than she'd ever been. Brianna created a plan. Work at the cafe. Document Blake's actions. Contact lawyers when finances allowed. Rebuild connections remotely. Escape Morocco without alerting Blake. She helped during busy periods. Reorganized Hamed's finances and expanded to neighboring businesses. Word spread about the American financial expert. She saved enough for a ticket home. But a new idea crystallized. Going home meant fighting Blake on his turf, with his resources. For years, instead, she could reinvent herself. Blake thought he'd broken her. He'd never expect her to rise stronger. She closed the ticket website, deciding to transform her betrayal into a new foundation. With Hamed's blessing, she approached local businesses, organizing their finances, optimizing cash flow. Her first client, Hassan, a leather goods merchant, had records in shoeboxes. She streamlined his system, uncovered an employee skimming profits, earning generous payment and recommendations. By week 4, she had 6 clients, her Arabic expanding to financial terms. In week 6, while helping Aisha set up an online presence for the cafe, inspiration struck. She created a new identity. Lynn Reynolds, using her middle name and grandmother's maiden name, and set up profiles on financial consulting platforms, offering remote services. 2 former colleagues connected her with small clients. She worked nights on the cafe's Wi-Fi, delivering exceptional results. 8 weeks after her abandonment, David Chin, an American financial services provider in Dubai, offered her a permanent position after a phone consultation. "We need someone with your eye for detail," he said. "Your perspective on fraud from the inside would be invaluable." The irony wasn't lost on her. Blake's betrayal had given her this expertise. She needed 2 weeks, arranging her own travel. She created secure cloud storage for her documentation, transitioned her clients, and bought a ticket through Turkey to obscure her destination. Saying goodbye to Hamed and Aisha was hard. They'd become her Moroccan family. Hamed gave her a leather-bound journal from Hassan with a note: "For writing your new story." She left before dawn, taking only a backpack, leaving no digital trail. As the plane lifted from Moroccan soil, Brianna watched the landscape recede. She was leaving behind the trusting wife, emerging as Lynn Reynolds, a financial phoenix with knowledge of how men like Blake operated. Dubai's skyline gleamed as she landed. With 267, she navigated to a modest apartment in Al Barsha, bypassing luxury taxis for the metro. At a salon, she cut her hair to chin length, dyed it auburn, subtly altering her appearance. She bought 3 professional outfits with Middle Eastern influences, replacing her pearl studs with gold hoops. At Integrated Financial Solutions, David welcomed her as Lynn Reynolds. Her role involved assessing vulnerabilities in financial systems. "Your experience with fraud detection will be invaluable," he said. She lived frugally, saving every dirham, researching Blake's firm. They had no presence in the UAE. By her 2nd month, she moved to Business Bay, her client roster growing. She specialized in protecting family offices from internal threats. "A service resonating in Dubai." "You see the danger in people," a client said, unaware of how she'd learned that lesson. In her 4th month, David assigned her to a new project: Meridian Partners, Blake's firm, rebranded for global expansion. "They're sending representatives next month," he said. "I want you to lead our team." That night, she paced her apartment, weighing options. She could refuse, resign, or lean into the irony. Learning Blake's plans while hidden as Lynn, she chose the third, researching their structure, spotting familiar patterns of fraud. They hadn't stopped. They had scaled up. She participated remotely, claiming conflicts, joining video calls with technical difficulties, affecting her camera. 2 days before Blake's team arrived, David said the principals, Carter, Wallace, Sinclair, would come next month. Relief washed over her, but she confirmed Blake, Grant, and Mason were involved. She compiled evidence of their practices, sending it anonymously to the SEC, Dubai's financial regulatory authority, and a prominent client, Sheikh Abdullah, considering investment in Meridian. The timing was precise. Questions would emerge as Blake arrived. One evening, at Atmosphere in Burj Khalifa, she spotted Grant and Gabrielle. Their eyes locked. Confusion flickered on Gabrielle's face. Brianna nodded to her client, leaving unhurriedly. 2 days later, Gabrielle viewed her LinkedIn profile. Missed calls flooded her old phone. 121 from Blake, Grant, Mason, Ellie. Their messages spiked with urgency. Travel plans accelerated. Blake and Mason arrived in 3 days. She met with David, sharing select details. "I worked with them in the States," she said. "I left when I discovered irregularities I couldn't support." "Would you prefer to withdraw?" he asked. "I'd like to oversee it entirely," she replied. "I know what to look for." On their 3rd day in Dubai, Lynn was having coffee at a dress downtown when Blake and Mason appeared. Looking harried, she raised her cup in a small salute, maintaining eye contact until Blake went pale. He approached, Mason scrambling behind. "Brianna, Blake said, his voice a mix of shock and forced warmth. We've been so worried. My name is Lynn Reynolds, she replied coolly. You have me confused with someone else. Stop this, he hissed. We need to talk privately. I have a precise understanding of what I'm doing, she said, gathering her belongings, and what you've been doing. So do the authorities. Mason grabbed Blake's arm as security glanced over. Not here, he muttered. I have a meeting, she said, standing. Focus on answering the questions coming your way. The calls intensified. 121 in total. She listened to one voicemail. Brianna, please, they're opening an investigation. We can fix this. Call me back. She deleted it, erasing all 37 voicemails and 121 calls. Dismantling her past. Meridian's Dubai plans collapsed. Approval stalled. Investors withdrew. Their team departed. A week later, David offered her a partnership. Sheikh Abdullah was impressed with how you identified Meridian's issues. He said, he's recommended us to 3 family offices. That evening, as Dubai's skyline glittered, Lynn stood as a newly minted partner, a woman Blake no longer recognized. He'd orchestrated her ending. Instead, he'd set the stage for her most powerful beginning. Lynn's story shows what happens when betrayal becomes a catalyst for reinvention. Abandoned in Morocco, she rose in Dubai, turning her husband's cruelty into her greatest strength. Sometimes, the deepest wounds forge the sharpest comebacks. What do you think? Should Lynn have answered Blake's calls? Or was her silence the ultimate justice? Have you ever turned a betrayal into a new beginning? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. These stories connect us, showing us we're not alone in our struggles. If you enjoyed this tale, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss out. I'm here every day with new tales from Reddit and beyond, so stick around. See you next time.